It wasn't until I read a specific sentence by Carl Jung that the ink on her skin started to scream at me. I was sitting across from a woman I had known for years, someone who had recently covered her entire arm in a chaotic tapestry of serpents, daggers, and weeping eyes. And suddenly I didn't see art. I saw a map of a war zone. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And right there, in that quiet moment, the realization hit me like a physical blow. What if these aren't just tattoos? What if they are psychological distress signals, hiding in plain sight? We are told to look at tattoos as fashion, as rebellion, as self-expression, but once you view them through the lens of analytical psychology, you realize that many women aren't expressing who they are. They are expressing what they have lost, and the terrifying part is they don't even know they're doing it. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. The ink isn't silence, it's the loudest cry in the room. The anatomy of the storm. Let's look at the timing. If you really pay attention to the stories behind the ink, not the surface level I just like the design stories, but the real ones, you find a timeline that chills you to the bone. Women rarely cover themselves in heavy, dark imagery during the happiest, most stable years of their lives. Script reference. The needle usually meets the skin during the storm, immediately after the breakup, in the hollow months following a death, in the chaotic aftermath of a betrayal or an identity collapse. Why? Why do we feel the urge to permanently alter our physical vessel? Exactly when our psychological vessel is cracking? Jung would argue that when the psyche cannot process a trauma intellectually, it must manifest it physically. The pain is too great to hold inside, so it must be brought outside. It must be etched into the very barrier that separates the self from the world. Think about the sensation of getting a tattoo. The sharp, rhythmic stinging, the endorphin rush, the blood. It is a controlled trauma. For a woman who feels like her life is spiraling out of control, whose internal world is a chaotic whirlwind of grief or rage, the act of getting tattooed is a way to reclaim agency. It is a way to say, I choose this pain, I control this needle. I decide when it starts and when it ends. But here is the trap. The relief is temporary, the ink is permanent. And what remains on the skin is not a solution. It is a monument to the wound. I started noticing that the women with the most ink were often the ones carrying the heaviest unprocessed shadows. They were wearing their trauma-like armor, hoping that if they made their skin look tough, or dangerous, or complex, the world wouldn't notice that the soul underneath was trembling. Decoding the archetypes, this goes deeper than just the act of tattooing. It's about what is being tattooed. You see the same symbols repeating across thousands of women who have never met. Why? Why do we see an explosion of serpents? Why the broken clocks? Why the chained hearts? The skulls? The wings that look too heavy to fly? These are not random Pinterest trends. These are archetypes. This is the language of the unconscious mind bubbling to the surface. Take the serpent, for example. In Jungian analysis, the snake is a complex symbol of the unconscious, of transformation, but also of danger and the devouring mother. A woman who suddenly feels compelled to wrap a snake around her limb may be grappling with a profound transformation of her feminine identity, or perhaps a toxic relationship with her own instincts. She thinks she chose the design because it looked cool, but her unconscious chose it because it was the only way to speak. Or look at the Medusa. How many times have you seen the Gorgon's head inked on a woman's thigh or chest? The myth of Medusa is a story of a woman violated, punished for a crime she didn't commit, and turned into a monster whose gaze turns men to stone. It is the ultimate symbol of female rage and protective trauma. When a woman inks Medusa on her body, she is unconsciously signaling a deep protective fury. She is saying, stay back, I have been hurt and I will destroy you if you come too close. It is a warning sign, but we call it aesthetic. And then there are the clocks, often stopped, often broken, often melting. This is the archetype of Chronos, of time that has become an enemy. It suggests a trauma that froze time, a moment the psyche cannot move past. The ink tries to capture the moment, to hold it, to master it. But in doing so, it keeps the wearer trapped in that timeline forever. Jung said, the unconscious speaks in images. If we stop listening to the words people say and start looking at the images they wear, we realize we are walking through a gallery of beautiful tragic confessions. The shadow on the spine. There is one phenomenon that I found particularly haunting. The back tattoo. I want you to think about the psychology of tattooing your back. It is the largest canvas on the human body. It is the foundation, the pillar that holds you upright. And yet it is the one place on your own body that you will never, ever directly see. You can only see it in a reflection. You can only see it through the eyes of others. So when a woman covers her entire back in dark, intricate, meaningful ink, who is it for? It cannot be for her, not in the direct sense. It is a message for the world. It is a shield for her blind spot. Jung spoke extensively about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny, repress, and hide. He believed the shadow often resides in the places we cannot see. By tattooing the back, a woman is often unconsciously trying to armor her vulnerable side. She is protecting the part of herself that feels most exposed to attack. I spoke to a psychologist who specializes in body dysmorphia and trauma, and she told me something that stuck with me. The back is where we feel the eyes of the judgment. It's where we feel defenseless. If you have been stabbed in the back, metaphorically or literally, by a parent, a lover, or society, you will feel an urge to armor that space. The ink becomes a form of scaring off predators. There is nothing soft here. Even my back is dangerous. But beneath that armor, the little girl who was betrayed is still waiting to be hugged. And the ink, no matter how thick, cannot hug her back. The persona and the mask. This brings us to one of Jung's most critical concepts. The persona is the mask we wear to interact with society. It is the role we play. For centuries, the persona imposed on women was one of softness, purity, submission, and unmarked skin. To be ladylike was to be blank, a canvas for men to project their desires onto. In the modern age, the pendulum has swung violently in the opposite direction. But Jung warned that swinging to the opposite is not freedom. It is just enantiodromia. A woman who covers herself in hard tattoos, skulls, weapons, dark lines, is often rejecting the good girl persona. She is ripping off the mask of submission, but she is immediately slapping on a new mask. The bad bitch, the warrior, the damaged but dangerous woman. She trades one costume for another. Jung would ask, "Who are you when you take off the mask?" But here, you can't take off the mask. The mask has been injected into the dermis. When you solidify a temporary rebellion into a permanent state, you might get that tattoo at 22. But what happens at 35? What happens at 40? You become trapped in a museum of your past traumas. It reminds you, this is who you are. You are the one who was hurt. The addiction of control. We need to talk about the dopamine loop. Many women describe the process of getting tattooed as addictive. They talk about the itch. When you live with emotional dysregulation, when your internal world feels like a storm, your body becomes the only territory you can govern. You cannot control if he leaves you. You cannot control if you lose your job. But you can control this patch of skin. It is a desperate grab for boundaries. It's not regret exactly, it's exhaustion. It's the exhaustion of a soldier who has been wearing heavy plate mail for 20 years. The paradox of meaning. When you ask a woman what her tattoos mean, watch her eyes. The conscious mind invents a logical story to explain the unconscious impulse. If the bird represents freedom, why is it caged in geometric lines? We are marking our bodies with the things we lack. We have signed a contract that says, this pain is now part of my physical identity. The path to individuation. So is the answer to never get a tattoo? Jung's ultimate goal for human beings was individuation. It involves facing the shadow, integrating it. She gets it as an act of completion, not compensation. They are crying out for initiation. They are writing their diaries on their skin because they don't trust anyone to read the pages. And this brings me back to that woman I sat across from. I didn't tell her about Jung. I didn't analyze her serpents. I looked her in the eye and asked, "How are you, really?" She hesitated. Her hand instinctively moved to cover the ink on her arm. "I'm tired," she whispered. And that is the harsh truth no one talks about. The ink is beautiful. The designs are intricate. But underneath the masterpiece, there is often just a tired soul, hoping that if she paints the walls of her house brightly enough, no one will notice the foundation is crumbling. Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." The tragedy is that for many, the tattoo ensures they remain exactly what happened to them. I want you to ask yourself the question that hurts. Are you decorating your temple? Or are you graffitiing the walls of a prison you built yourself? Is this ink your voice? Or is it your silence? Until you make the unconscious conscious, the ink will direct your life. And you will call it art.